May I have your name and the name of your business, please?
My name is C. Allen Johnson. My business is CompuMedic.com.
Okay. Earlier last week, we would have spoken about technology, computers, our concerns. What off the bat are you trying to tell us as far as technology in the Bahamas is concerned? What is your concern?
Well, one of the things is that the Bahamas being one of the most technologically prepared as far as infrastructurally with the internet backbone that Cable Bahamas has put in and what BTC has put in. One of my concern is that the Bahamas has failed to begin to utilize this backbone to embrace what is called a knowledge-based economy. We somehow begin to have what is called a reliance on the tourism product, whereas we talk about going for globalization as well as embracing the global marketplace, the global economy, and I feel that the Bahamas within itself is not utilizing the full potential, especially in these economic times, to embrace the new earning potential that's there through via the internet.
Right.
As far as security, when I spoke to you, one of my major concerns was that I heard a few people speak on the phishing that's going on, which such as Oswald Brown, Dr. Patterson, and others who have been affected with not having a complete understanding of how it's accomplished. You know, we hear that the police is going to investigate it, but it goes beyond the borders of the Bahamas and the way these things are being accomplished.
Right. Okay, let's go back now. Are you saying then that outside of tourism there is so much more that we can do to perhaps make our monies? What are you saying with regards to technology? How can we benefit from that?
Well, the technology is the language of the new generation. Essentially, based in the Bahamas right here, we have about 4 different generations of people that is actually living right now within the Bahamas. We have the baby boomers, which is born between 1940 and 1960. We have Generation X, which is 1960 to 1980, which is such as myself. Then we have Generation Y, which is 1980 to 2000. Then there's a convergence of those, which is called the millennials. And basically, their language, their technology is their language. You know, you have individuals where they was to leave their cellular home, they suffer this anxiety of they have to go back because I may miss a call, I may miss something. You know, we live in a society of emails, texting, telecommunications, and it's all converging as one. Now, what happens is, since it's their language in education and other things, especially in business, we talk about going out of the borders of the Bahamas, and we talk about the various agreements such as EPA and the other agreements that is coming. But what we have failed to do is we have failed to prepare ourselves to get this global market. We have maintained the approach as if we have to physically go to those particular locations when technology could take us there now, even before we sign these agreements.
Right. How can you assist in that area? What is it that you do that you think you can bring to the table in doing all of that?
Well, over the last year, I have worked with a group of individuals where we have worked towards developing a technology empowerment center here in Freeport, Grand Bahama. And it's our goal. We're looking at maybe launching before the end of the year, where we're going to have a facility with about 200 computers. And essentially what we want to do is we want to bring our people within the Bahamas, so the public service as well as within the schools, into what is called IC3 certification, which is Internet Computing Competencies, core competencies. And essentially, basically, what it does is make sure they have full understanding of what a computer is, use of the computer, use of the internet, and it's all of the different advantages of using it. And then we were looking at moving towards bringing that within the classroom into what is called an e-learning environment. We're looking at partnering with a school to put in whiteboards and computers on every desk, and having the teachers. And this is why when we say the public service as well as the BUT is having one or few or even a school of teachers prepared in such a manner that they can become the pilot for this new learning thing. And so what it is we believe in what is called a 24-hour learning, that the classroom never ends. From the time the students come, there's 24 hours a day. Students, even if they miss classes, can actually log in and see what's going on in classes. They can have interactive participation with the teachers, and a host of different things that's available is done. When we talk about students have certain disadvantages, we have a learning process called ADAPT, whereas essentially, you have, let's say we're teaching the sixth grade. Within that sixth grade class of 40 students, you may have a few of them that's in seventh grade level, a few in sixth grade level, some in sixth grade level, some in fourth grade level. While the computer doesn't, as a teacher, just teaches at a particular sixth grade level, the computer differentiates each one of them and teaches them at their level. It begins to move the student from the fourth grade level to the fifth grade level, and then it takes the students in the fifth grade level and move them to the sixth, and those within the seventh can be identified, and the educators can be informed, and we can move to maybe the same the school programs where we have magnet schools, or gear their interest in particular interests for advanced placement within those classes. And so you don't teach the whole class assuming that 40 of them are on the same learning level. So the teachers basically have their syllabus, and the computer basically gauge the level they are, try to bring those behind up, and those that's ahead we try to advance them even further.
Right. Do you think that this, what you're trying to do, it can benefit in the sense that it helps with growth, and are we ready for that?
I think we're more than ready, because if you look at what our kids do already today, they are engrossed within the internet. Everything they do, from YouTube to Facebook to MySpace and all of these different things. These things are not more than just communication. These are learning tools. And so they are receptive. The problem is that we may have what we call the baby boomers who have either afraid to or have chosen not to move into this new millennial, this new method of learning, new method of teaching.
Right. And it's basically preparing them for the future, you believe?
Yeah, the future. See, you talk about the future. I think the future is now. Because it is, when we look at the amount of money that the Bill Gates Foundation is investing in globalization, having internet around the world, when you look at what Microsoft, his company himself, is doing as far as putting a .NET platform, making sure that internet is in all the classrooms, all remote places, rural places, Africa, everywhere else. And so in the future, if you take into perspective that in the year 2002, the information produced in the year 2002 was equal to all the information produced since the Garden of Eden in 1 year, compiled within 2002. And so when we begin to look at that right now, the information that my kids learn today is 6 to 7 times what I had to learn when I was in school 20 years ago. And so when we begin to use 19th century teaching techniques, trying to embrace 21st century information, which is moving every 18 months. Every information you learn today is obsolete in 18 months. And so here we're spending 2 years teaching them 6 months of information that'll be obsolete by the time we finish teaching them.
Wow. If there is something that the government would have to do to engage in this and to get this going, what would their step be? What would they have to do?
Well, what happens is a decision has to be made. We often hear that it's expensive. To me, it's expensive for us not to do it, because what happens is, as we begin to compete in the global marketplace, what happens is that you have China, you have India, you have the Philippines, and all these other countries, and you have Costa Rica that are beginning a rapid rollout of technology-based, and what we basically call a knowledge-based economy. And these are the very countries that we are going to be competing with. And so here it is that if we don't prepare now, today, if we say we're going to put this even off for 2 years, we will be 5 years behind in that learning curve, in that learning process. And it's not impossible. So what happens is, what we have to do, what the government has to do, the government has to take a proactive approach and begin to look at what we can do. Even if we don't do a full rollout, clearly we can begin to take an aggressive short-term approach, be it 3, 4, 5 years, to embrace this whole rollout. And then what we can do is, we don't look at the cost. We look at we use the expression value for money, and says, okay, if it costs this, what is our value for money? What do we get out of it? And if we have a productive workforce, and we have a plan, the group of us, we call it Bahamas 2020, call it 2020 vision. And this is why we're looking at rolling out before the end of the year, because we're saying that beginning at the end of this year, in 12 years, we could have our from going into first grade, we could have our first graduating class that has been technologically enriched for the entire 12-year period. And we're talking about students graduating, we're talking about the IDB, the International Bachelor Degree Program, the IBD. And we could actually embrace those learning methods and put those in our class, not necessarily those platforms, but just using technology where the kids our children can have the information readily available for them and utilize them today. And that puts them years ahead of our competitors.
Right. So what would how would we do is, you mentioned, it may not necessarily have to all come at once. Let's just say we have the Lewis Yard Primary School. What would you do for the first graders that are going into their first term? How does this work? Is that where you're going to target the first graders?
Yes, our goal is to target multiple grades simultaneously, but using Lewis Yard Primary School, you would take the first graders, okay? What you have is you have these students coming in with some of them with no type of learning experience at all. Some of them may have attended preschool as such. Essentially, you would almost look at them as a blank slate and begin to what's called an immersion into information technology-based learning environment, where the technology and computers and these other whiteboards and other things become an integral part of their learning process. You know, we talk about having not sufficient books for learning process. We can use the computers to teach phonics. We can use them to teach number identifications. We can use them to teach basic math skills. We could incorporate games within the actual first grade environment, where as far as the kids are concerned, it's a wonderful game, but they're developing skills, cognitive skills, critical thinking skills that they're continuously developing. And as they begin to progress, it becomes unavoidable for them to be continuously embraced within this whole immersion, because instead of education being an offshoot, it becomes a part of their life, and an immersion type continuous learning process. And this is where we say the 24-hour process, because here is they're exposed to these computers within the classroom. When they go home and you say do your homework, the kids is like, you mean I get to play the game again? But it's a learning process.
Right. So what about those who may say, well, my child doesn't have a computer at home, they have it at school, but then when they come home, are they going to be at a disadvantage for those who may not be able to afford it? How would you?
Well, this is one of the things we're also looking at. We in conjunction with our learning process, it's more of an eBahamas initiative that we're trying to learn. We're looking at getting computers in the classroom. We're beginning looking to partner with companies such as Dell, companies such as Microsoft, and we're looking at getting affordable computers in the classroom. Currently right now we in negotiations where we have brought the price of computers substantially down, a substantial amount of money, whereas for under $1,000 an individual can get a desktop computer, 20-inch monitor, a laser printer, everything for well under $1,000, everything they need to function at home. And we're looking to partner, with the local banking institution, or even an ASU program, whereas the people can join an ASU, and in the end result, they end up with this computer. We're looking at partnering with Dell also for what they have. There'll be negotiations with them where they have what is called return from lease. These computers are less than a year old, because essentially what Dell does, and we're using that same 18-month model where it become obsolete in 18 months, within 1 year Dell replaces them, and we're talking about thousands of them. And if we were able to consummate this relationship, we're talking about bringing a sub $600 fully loaded computer into the home that we can do. Then we'll begin to look to partnership with BTC and Cable Bahamas for making affordable internet service. In the absence of that, we're also looking at the contingency of setting up a community networks where we would actually set up a Wi-Fi within the community that allows those particular computers that is gotten through our programs, or even for a small fee, is to have complete free access to the internet. Because one of our models, a part of our movement, is that we believe the internet should be free.
Right. Remind me of what you're calling this program that you wish to implement.
It's called the eBahamas Initiative, and we're looking at launching. We have acquired the websites ebahamas.org and e-bahamas.org, where we're looking at launching our platform by the end of the month, and making ourselves available to. We want to make ourselves available to school, education facilities, community centers, to churches, whatever available, for free of charge or a very nominal fee to cover whatever expenses we may have to incur for maybe travel or such.
Right.
But our consultancy will be totally free. We will come in, help you develop your program, help you reach out for what is called public-private public-private partnership as well as governmental partnership to actually begin to put what is called true technology empowerment centers within each of our communities. We talking about we want to put at least 80. We talk about the 41 districts that's around. We want to put at minimum 82 of these centers within the area. When we just go back to education, when we start talking about the outlying islands like Inagua, Mayaguana, and these various different things, you could actually have a teacher's aide or a particular teacher that governs these classrooms where we have these particular all-age school, where they can actually participate in the learning environment in New Providence, in Grand Bahama, without physically being there. Because at the same time the teacher is in here, Grand Bahama, teaching the class, they are participating in that class in a two-way forum type communication. And these expenses, you're talking about wiring a class in that capacity at the cost of a teacher for well under $10,000. And when we begin to look at actually placing a teacher down in Mayaguana to do these classes, covering housing and transportation and all these various different things, we could actually have more for less, and that actually pays for itself.
Bahamas Initiative.
Yeah.
Okay, definitely. Outside of that, what you're targeting right now, you also mentioned the fact of computer fraud, internet fraud.
Right.
Speak on the terms that you would have mentioned the other day with regards to us not being safe somehow.
Well, one of the things is, which I'm going to show you shortly, is that Oswald Brown as well as Dr. Patterson and others have been done. It's a process called phishing. And essentially what it does is, you have a lot of times you have individuals, most of them it lies from not to be disparaging to African nations or such, but a majority of the frauds that we have in the technology field and the security field have investigated originates from these countries. That's why you'll always see them say, wire the money to Africa, I'm stuck in Africa, I'm stuck in these various different places. But essentially what they do is they send out these regular plain looking emails that actually piques curiosity, and then there's a process called XSS, where it's a scripting program where as soon as you just simply read the email, it takes possession of your computer, the cookies that are planted on your computer, and it gives them the ability to actually have full access to your inbox without ever having your password as such. We have another process for which they would actually send you. Sometimes you have individuals who send pictures that, do you know this picture? Do you know this person in this picture? And embedded within those pictures are also scripting, also within they'll send it as a form of a zip file. And when you click to open the zip file, it seems as though nothing happened. But in the background, something is happening. What is happening is that you have the possibility of having installed key logging programs. You have programs that also install a code for whenever you go to Hotmail. You may be sitting in your Hotmail account, and for a fraction of a second, here you are reading your email, and for a fraction of a second, your whole inbox disappears. Another page pops up telling you to log in again. The problem with that is you have not logged out. That is the malicious script that is having you believe. So what you do is you type back in your username, you type back in your passcode, and put sign in. The minute you do that, it exits it, sends the username and passcode off to the other individual, and brings back up the other where you were before. And so you naturally assume that, oh, I just re-logged back into the program, not even realize that you have just release your information. And that's basically come under the major category of phishing.
Wow. So if that were to happen, the wisest thing would be to not...
Yeah, one of the things I tell people to do is that if you was to automatically be logged out, exit out of all of your window browsers and launch a window browser of your own that you have initiated, not that a malicious script may have, and just log in again on your own, because don't use a page that came up by itself. Another good alternative would be is to buy a good phishing program. You have Computer Associates, you have Semantics, you have McAfee, you have various different programs. And a lot of time people they buy these computer systems from these bargain basement prices, and they assume that these things come with it. They do not. if they do, they come for 30, 60, or 90 days. And a lot of people after that time is then they say, okay, I don't have the $100. I don't have this, I don't have that, that to actually involve. And actually what they do is they actually increase their risk, because you have these various different things. Because essentially, and again, if you look, and chances, there's a very good chance that most of the people in the Bahamas that have had their email hacked and made these financial requests, each had each other's email. They were all part of a whole part of a social network. So essentially, at the same time they were sending this request for the money, they were also getting your passcode. And so any one of those people who got those requests and haven't done so, I would tell them immediately, change their passcode. Do not change it to familiar phrases and power phrases and such. Develop a combination of name, of numbers and letters, and even some of the upper caps like the pound symbol and the and symbol or the dollar signal, the dollar sign, somewhere within your code. And change your code regularly. I recommend changing at least every 2 months.
Yeah. Should we take this seriously in the sense? Oh, knock a key. Should we take the next one too? Okay, that's it. Should we take this seriously? A lot of people tend to be like, oh, it's not going to happen to me, and I know I don't this, I don't that. Is this something that we should be taking seriously on a daily basis?
Absolutely. Again, it goes back to what we spoke about moving into this global economy. And again, in the global economy, there is no borders, and you are responsible for your own protection. We talk about the ACH that's coming online. If you check the financial institutions within the U.S., and I don't know if we even have any protection built into our current data laws concerning loss of monies and such, like in the U.S., the banks are mostly responsible for any type of incidents, whereas if you could prove it was not your responsibility, such as credit card fraud, you're responsible for the first $50. I don't know in particular if those are built in. But whereas you have, say, for instance, you have individuals out there that as soon as the Bahamas go online, they will be using the exact same format that we talk about the Hotmail. They will begin to go into Bank of the Bahamas or RBC or Scotiabank and begin to mimic their login process. And then you will go into the whole process. You'll get an email asking usually that Scotiabank or RBC or whatever particular bank is asking you to verify your particular information. And again, you go in and enter all your information, and in a fraction of a second, it's all gone. And when they finish, they'll take you back to the real world bank. But what it does is you just provided most of the times with them with most of the information for them to assume your identity without ever meeting you, without ever taking your purse or coming into your house, because they have basically got you to send them the information willingly. And we talk about shopping globally. A lot of us have credit cards from the banks. We have it from the U.S. institutions and such. And so as we begin to shop more and more, basically it's just having us to become aware. That's one of the biggest things one of the biggest errors that we make in our judgment, is that we just treat it nonchalant. We think, when I get robbed, is the person going to physically come and take the money out of my pocket? You could empty your bank account in a matter of minutes. ACH going on. I'm sure they're working on some strengthening security. They will have, I would assume, that everything in their place. But they cannot do anything about you voluntarily giving up the information to your bank account. And that's where the problem is. And so it's an education process where I think that the BACH may most likely begin to take an approach of educating us into this new global economy, this e-commerce thing, to understand there is some risk that goes along with it. But you could minimize the risk simply by being aware. Treating your credit cards as cash. Just as you wouldn't leave your $100 sitting on the table, you don't leave your credit card sitting on the table. Because, as soon as they get the information, they naturally assume your identity, and they don't have to be here. They shop on the internet and have it shipped and drop shipped to wherever they are.
Wow. And finally, I would have asked you the question what you would have mentioned. Police say, well, we're going to investigate this. Very rarely are they able to deal with internet crime, are they?
No, because it's a challenge even for large countries such as the United States, because of what you have is the cross-border of these crimes. The individual can be sitting in Italy, commit the crime here in the Bahamas, shop in the U.S. and have the product shipped to South Africa. So what happens? Whose jurisdiction? And you're going to have an individual who's going to say, they just used my credit card for $2,000. So so you're going to call up the police station and says, we have Ms. Pakisha here in the Bahamas, and they just got her for $2,000. We need you now to drop all the resources we have investigating murders and other major cases to find out who took her money, and then try to prove them guilty in that respect. So the best thing is going to be prevention.